All right, well, I'm going to try to go ahead and get this show on the road. See if this is working. And I don't know, I feel like I want a beep to go off and say, yeah, it's time for your show right now. But yeah, just going to go ahead and talk about pet food labels today because, you know, I keep telling people that the labels are important, more along the lines because they are deceptive as regards pet food. So I'm going to try to point out some really interesting stuff about pet food and marketing ploys. So here we go, pet food label review. I'm Dr. Donna DeBonis, known as the Pet Food Vet, and I try to get on here every Thursday around 1 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. It's really kind of late today. Sorry about that, folks, but hey, we're doing it now. So, as I've said before, AFCO is in charge of figuring out what regulations we have for pet food. I find it, again, incredibly interesting that there is a nonprofit organization that is deciding FDA and state regulations about pet food. I think everyone should be concerned about that because this nonprofit organization is making a lot of money. And remember, nonprofit does not mean you are not making money. Side note, PETA makes a lot of money, and the executive director of PETA is a millionaire because of it. So here we have AFCO, and they have set up 8 pet food label requirements. And those are, number 1, name of the product must be on the label. Number 2, the net weight, also known as the quantity statement, must be on there. Number 3 is the manufacturer's name and address. And it doesn't have to be an address that is, as you know, a street address. It's a very simplified version of the address, just the name of the facility and the city and state. Number 4 is the ingredient statement. Number 5, guaranteed analysis. Number 6, nutritional adequacy statement. That means which life stage is it used for. Number 7, feeding directions. And number 8, calorie statement. So let's take a deep dive on each one of those requirements. Number 1, proper name, identification, and purpose of the product. So what I've done is I freely admit that I have taken some very amateur photographs of pet food labels. I went into the very large pet store, huge pet store, with aisles and aisles of pet food, so I could really look at all the different labels and find what I needed to find. And I was very successful. And I started out with this Purina 1 can of dog food. So proper name and identification and purpose of the product. In this particular instance, you should understand that all of us will buy items based on what that label looks like. And if you're like me and you need to look at things with either a magnifying glass or special glasses sometimes that make things bigger, you know, reading glasses and things like that, you may not have with you when you're shopping. So the label does tend to have some points on there that are really very large and easy to see, white letters on a dark background. In this particular instance, that's the case. So the product's name must include the purpose of the nutrition of the product. And this label in particular shows that its purpose is to provide a nutrient-dense formula, which sounds really fantastic, right? And the item that I took a picture of is Purina 1 Smart Blend. It's a canned food of True Instinct, nutrient-dense formula. Classic ground with real chicken and duck. So keep that in mind for later on when the ingredients are are looked at more closely on these labels. In this case, the ingredients of chicken and duck are listed as part of the name of the item. And that, by the way, is super effective because, as you can see, as an example in this particular picture, the ingredients are at the top of the label and they are white on a darker background, so it's really easy to see. Number 2, the net weight. So the net weight is the amount of quantity of the product that is present in the container. And I've got a picture of a label that shows the amount of pounds or kilograms that are listed in the bag of dog food. So this one shows net weight 5 pounds, and that is 2.26 kilograms. Number 3, what AFCOS does state has to be on the label. And this is, as I said before, the name and address of the distributor or manufacturer. So it's kind of interesting if you think about that. The manufacturer does not have to be on the pet food label. The distributor does. One or the other has to be on there. So in this case, it's the reason I mention this is because the manufacturer may be a feed mill in the Midwest, as an example, and then the distributor might be something completely different. And a good example of that is Costco, and they distribute one of the brands that come out of Diamond feed mills. And so the distributor only has to be listed on there with the name and address, city, state, and zip of the company that is the guarantor of the product. So if there's an issue with that particular pet food, that is how you're going to get in touch with the guarantor of that particular food. So if someone else makes or distributes it, then the label must show that is the relationship by saying manufactured for or distributed by in front of the address. So I have 2-3 labels on here in my amateur photographic ability. And I have distributed by Nature's Variety, St. Louis, Missouri, and it has the website on there. And as an example. Number 4, ingredient list by weight of the common name. So this is this begins to be another deceiving practice, and that's the common name. AFCO uses anything but common names. It's allowed to put out a name that it could make up for something or a process. And we'll see that further on in this slideshow. The highest percentage of the total weight of the ingredient as it goes into the product will be listed first on the ingredient list. And I want to put this particular example up here of ingredients listed with chicken, and then water is the next ingredient sufficient for processing byproducts. The third ingredient is duck. The fourth ingredient is potassium chloride. I don't know what to say about the rest of the items that are listed on there, as mostly look like vitamin mineral supplements. But the fact that it shows chicken as number 1, water next, and then duck, and this is the back of the can of food that I had in the beginning of the slideshow. And remember, they can put chicken as the first ingredient when it is raw. It is got a lot of water weight in it, so the chicken is weighing heavier. And even though water is listed as the second ingredient, yeah, this is actually true. So the names used must be the AFCO defined name or else the common name of the ingredient. So look, they can use AFCO defined name. AFCO can make up a name. It states it clearly here as the 4th regulation. AFCO allowed itself to make up its own defined name. Only the ingredients that are GRAS, generally regarded as safe. That's what GRAS means. GRAS are the initials, generally regarded as safe. Or else AAFCO approved for use in animal feeds may be used. So there'll be some items that'll be on a label that you'll look at that and you'll be like, I've never seen that on a human food label. And you're right. You were great because you noticed the difference between animal feed labels and human food labels. And that is that AAFCO has items that it's approved for use in animal feeds that are not approved for use in human feeds, because it has been demonstrated to be a problem in humans to ingest those items. And they figure the reason it's approved for animal feeds, and sadly pet food is listed under animal feeds, the reason it's approved for use in animal feeds is because AAFCO's approved it. And also it's approved because the general consensus is that slaughtered animals that are going to be slaughtered for food for humans and other animals, that they're only a few weeks or months old, rarely more than a couple of years old. And therefore, we don't see the long-term problems that come from feeding something that really isn't safe to be fed, that is actually toxic. And that's why it's allowed to be fed to animals, because the assumption is that, well, we're going to slaughter them before the cancer is really obvious, as an example, or before the animal dies of the toxicity of that item. So I got to tell you, it's very convoluted and actually illogical thinking, but that is the way it is considered. So number 5 item that must be on the label is the guaranteed analysis on an as-fed basis. So the guaranteed analysis on the label lists the percentages of each nutrient in the food. It is always required to list minimum percentage of crude protein, minimum percentage of crude fat, and also the maximum percentages of crude fiber and moisture. And if we think about this, this is helpful because when you're looking at the guaranteed analysis, in this particular case, I again took the container of the canned food that I had in the first item there. It was a Purina canned food. Guaranteed analysis shows crude protein minimum is 9%, maximum fiber 1.5%, moisture maximum 78%. Yeah, kind of, it's just interesting to see the weight is a lot of moisture, which also is water. Paying for a lot of water there. Number 6, nutritional adequacy, also known as the AAFCO statement. Nutritional adequacy shows that the product is intended for a certain stage of life. Also, if the product states that it is a complete imbalance, then this claim must be substantiated. And so that AAFCO statement on this particular bag of food says, animal feeding tests using AAFCO procedures substantiate that Science Diet adult 7+ active longevity original dog food provides complete and balanced nutrition for the maintenance of adult foods. So this example is specifically mentioning what are known as the AAFCO procedures. And the animal feeding trials, what you should know, are really not that long. They can be considered as a complete food for all stages when you have a pet food, as an example, that was fed to a bitch who was pregnant. So that's during her entire pregnancy, also known as gestation, and I'm talking about a dog. And then when she is nursing, lactation of the puppies, and then on to where the puppies are 12 weeks old. That's considered complete life stage food. And I just want to make that clarification that you or I would think a complete life stage food would be till the dog is 8 or 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. But no, the feeding trials don't last that long in most food cases, if they even do any feeding trials. It's not required, by the way, to do feeding trials. But the feeding trials don't routinely last that long at all. They they have to last, if it's for all stages, till the puppy is 3 months old. That's it. That's all. Now, there are some pet foods out there that are of human grade, and they are made in USDA human commercial food kitchens, and they do have feeding trials, and they will list those of a year long, so that at least you've gone through the puppyhood and the full year, 12 months of time to pass for that feeding trial. So I am really impressed by that. And what they do during that is they ascertain at the beginning of the feeding trial that the pet is healthy. So day one, they'll pull all the blood samples, examine the pet, keep the records, and then on the final day of the feeding trial, again, 12 months, a year long, they'll pull those blood samples, compare them with the baseline of the first, when the pet was determined to be healthy, and they'll verify that it is still healthy. Number 7, feeding directions have to be on the label. So it's really important for you to understand there's the feeding directions have to be differentiated between complete products that are going to be a product that is supposed to be a whole meal versus a product that is a treat or a snack. So feeding directions for complete products state that it's mandatory that every product minimally have on there the feed product per weight of dog or cat. That's how much they'll be fed and how often, the feeding frequency they'll be fed. So an example is the kitten food label that I have up here, and it shows feeding directions: feed according to the age, size, and activity of your cat. And it goes on to say kitten up to 20 weeks of age. So in this case, they're saying a kitten is 5 months old, up to 5 months old. Feed as much as your kitten will eat in 3 or 4 feedings per day. So then it goes on to say that 21 to 30 weeks of age, feed 1/3 can per pound of body weight per day. 31 to 52 weeks of age, feed 1/4 can per pound of body weight per day. So how is that even determined? Well, theoretically, those kilocalories are matched up to the weight and the age of the animal according to known nutritional guidelines, and that's how they determine how much should be fed. Treats and snacks. Directions for feeding treats are optional when they are not complete or nutritionally balanced. In this case, they must be labeled as snacks or treats. So I have a picture of a pill treats container, and that pouch on there says it's treats, and it's not complete or nutritionally balanced. So it can be termed as a treat or a snack, even though it's going to be just a pill pocket type of thing that's used to put a capsule or a pill into. The calorie statement is the 8th item. The calorie statement must be indicated on a kilocalories per kilogram. The kilocalories are what consumers think of as calories. So you and I grew up thinking about, oh, this celery stick is this many calories, and it actually is kilocalories. That is the proper term. The kilogram refers to the amount of food. In the example below, there are 211 calories in this can of kitten food. So the calorie content, metabolizable energy, calculated 1,243 kilocalories per kilogram, or 211 kilocalories per can of kitten food. Labels also have 7 rules. Now this is where things get really interesting as far as marketing ploys and what are really the types of words that could mean one thing but really mean another, and that AFCO allows. So there's several of these, what I term ploys. Well, maybe the 7th one is not really a ploy. It's handling instructions for raw pet food. But what I will go through here is the 95% rule, the 25% rule, the width rule, WITH. Then there's the flavored rule. There's a health claim on the label, and the product intended for intermittent feeding only, as well as handling instructions. So there's 7 rules that must be covered. The 95% rule. This means that a product which uses the 95% rule has a very simple name and very few ingredients. The declared main ingredient must be at least 95% of the total and be listed first. So what I did was I took a pouch of Instinct Raw pet food, and it shows two pictures on the front, which says 95% chicken, turkey, organ, and bone. And I flipped that over and I took a picture of the ingredients listed on the back. Now, what's really interesting is that on the front, at the very top, it says 95% chicken, turkey, organs, and bone. Now hold that thought. The back of it under ingredients states chicken, parentheses, includes ground chicken bone, closed parentheses. So that's the first item on there. It doesn't say anything about chicken meat. It doesn't say chicken muscle. It doesn't say chicken meal. It says chicken, including ground chicken bone. So AAFCO allows chicken to be on a label, and it can also mean that it's ground chicken bone. Yeah, that's exactly what I said. The other thing is that it can say turkey, and actually turkey can mean turkey heart, because turkey heart's the next ingredient. It doesn't say turkey muscle. It doesn't say turkey bone, turkey meat, meal, anything. It says turkey heart. That's the second ingredient. Next, it says turkey liver, the third ingredient. Now, back to the front of the package, it says 95% chicken, comma, turkey, comma, organs, comma, and bone. Now, on the front label, 95% chicken, turkey, organs, and bone. Now it's list bone fourth. So now you're kind of thinking to yourself, oh, the ingredients has bone ground up listed last. That's not the case. If you switch it, that's on the label on the front. But when you turn it over and look on ingredients, and remember, ingredients have to state what is the highest weight of that ingredient list. And the very first thing on that ingredient list is, by law, the highest weight, and that says chicken, including ground chicken bone. How deceiving is that? All right, let's go on to the 25% or dinner rule. Many descriptions for dinner are used, like formula, platter, recipe, nuggets, etc. If the main ingredient in the name is less than 95% or more than 25% of the total, then the name must employ a descriptive term like dinner. So you and I think of a dinner as something pretty fancy. A recipe sounds really fancy, platter, so on. So I've got a picture of a label. It says, it's an example of this 25% rule. It shows kitten pate chicken and liver recipe, where the chicken and liver are the second and fourth ingredients. So the ingredients listed on here of this, it's kitten pate chicken and liver recipe. It's the 25% rule. Ingredients: chicken broth, chicken. Remember, chicken can also be chicken bone. Number 3, turkey, which apparently can be anything of the turkey. It could be the turkey liver or the heart. Next, it says chicken liver, ocean fish, brewer's rice, dried egg product, and so on. So this 25% or dinner rule is so deceiving. First ingredient, chicken broth, and then chicken, and we know now chicken can be anything. According to AAFCO, it's allowed to name it what it wants. Number 3 in these rules is the 3% or with rule. So we have a label here of WD food, and on the front of the label, it clearly shows the white letters on a dark background, kind of an orange background. It says with chicken. So we have WD food, which by the way is a weight control food, and it's a prescription diet. And it says that it claims it helps manage glucose and weight. And so this food says on it with chicken, the 3% or with rule. If mentioned in the name of the product as with, then the ingredient only has to comprise 3% of the entire amount. So I'm looking at this label, and it's the front of the package, and there's nothing on the front that refers to ingredients other than with chicken. And then I find out that the rule is 3%. So it only has to comprise 3%. If they can get 3% of the product to be at 3%, they're allowed to put with chicken as the only thing you see on the front of the package other than WD food. So now I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, cool, with chicken. Now I'm going to read you what's on the ingredients list. Number one, and first ingredient on there is brewer's rice. Second ingredient is corn gluten meal. Third ingredient, chicken meal. There you go. 3% of the entire amount. Marketing ploy. Front of the label says with chicken. But it's mostly rice. So number 4 rule is the flavored rule. This rule does not depend on percentages at all. Instead, the flavor of the ingredient need only be sufficient quantity to be detectable. So I want to think about this for a moment. This is pet food, and it says that the flavor has to be detectable. Now, how do they determine the flavor is detectable? I just want to know. Who tasted it and said, yeah, I detect that is hickory smoked bacon flavored soft chews? The flavor of the ingredient need only be in sufficient quantity to be detectable. So I have a package. Front of it says in a beautiful blue banner with white, bold writing on it, capital letters, hickory smoked bacon flavored. And then the ingredients on the back. Are you ready? Dried whey, glycerin, tapioca, corn syrup, poultry liver, sprayed dried chicken liver, poultry fat, brewer's dried yeast, sugar, beet molasses, vegetable gelatin, hydrolyzed corn protein, palm oil, sorbitol, lecithin. Finally, natural hickory smoked flavor. That's like the 16th item on there, natural hickory smoked flavor. Meanwhile, I've mentioned corn syrup. I've pointed out there's sugar, there's beet molasses, and those are 3 things that already are another names for sugar. So I'm thinking that the pet ate this because it was sweet. But I tell you, it does smell like hickory smoked bacon. I detected it because actually I had this in my cupboard. It was a pill pocket type thing. Yeah, I got some samples and I hadn't fed them or anything. I just opened it up and I thought, let me check this out. And there it was, hickory smoked bacon flavored soft chews. All right, fifth claim has to be health claim on the label. If there's a health claim on the label, the FDA does review the health claim. So it doesn't have to meet FDA requirements. The product to the right, I have a label, a picture of Oral Care by Hills, and it has the health claim of clinically proven to help reduce plaque and tartar. And then if you look in the left bottom of that label, it shows a seal, an emblem of the VOHC, which is the Veterinary Oral Health Council. And it says this is approved by the Veterinary Oral Health Council. So this, gosh, you got your FDA claim. You know, FDA does make sure that it has honored on there a health claim. The FDA does review it, and there is a Veterinary Oral Health Council on here as well. So that's the health claims that are on here, and they do have to be followed up with, you know, the federal agency of the FDA. And that that's kind of a good thing. I mean, at least somebody is keeping track of these health claims. All right, the next thing is the sixth item is product intended for intermittent or supplemental feeding only. Now, this is super important because what happens with pet foods when you're looking at them in their container, the containers themselves can be quite deceiving. So I took a picture of this item that was in the grocery store, and it's called Purina Fancy Feast, creamy with mackerel and vegetables in a decadent creamy broth. Yeah, and it's in one of those kind of like metal like pouches. It's sort of like if you go into the pet, not the pet food, but the human food aisles, and you go over and you're looking at cans of tuna fish. Well, now they have tuna fish in like these pouches that kind of are like, I don't know, aluminum inside. Well, anyway, you tear the top and then you can eat your tuna fish out of there. Well, this kind of is set up the same way in this pouch looking thing. And so these products, when they say on their they're not a complete meal. They're intended for supplemental feeding. And so what I did was I found this example, and I'd never really looked that closely before. But this one said on it that it was a complement. Gourmet cat complement. 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 But you almost look at that word and it almost looks like complete, but no, it's gourmet cat complement. And so this product on here says creamy with mackerel and vegetables and decadent creamy broth, gourmet cat complement. And it actually is intermittent. It's supplemental feeding. You only like pour it on their kibble or something like that. It's not meant to be a full, complete meal, but it's extremely deceiving when you look on it, and it was super expensive. So finally, the last rule is the handling instructions, precautions for raw food. And this is important because raw food has gained in such popularity. I do want to state again that a friend of mine, a veterinarian who was working on her master's for public health, she did her master's project where she took over 100 commercial raw food diets and had them tested at a state laboratory for pathogenic bacteria. When I say pathogenic bacteria, I mean the ones that cause food poisoning, Salmonella, Listeria, and E. coli. And remember, E. coli can produce toxins which are not destroyed by heat or cold or freezing. So that can be extremely dangerous for animals and people. So again, raw food has a lot going on right now. People are very excited by it. I talked to somebody last week who was super excited to say that we're feeding their pet what appeared to be like a jerky food. And it actually was air dried. So it was a raw food. And this is concerning because children are in the home, especially small children, who may look at this food and see it in the bowl and be like, oh, this does look like jerky, and eat it themselves. So for all of those people who are advocates of raw food diet, I don't want to get into a big deal about it here. I do want to say that I honor veterinarians who are strong proponents of this, and if it does work, I want to see the science that it works, and I want to know that I don't have to worry about it as far as public health. And I do have some friends that are veterinarians, and I've seen some really fantastic videos and YouTube coverage of veterinarians who discussed a raw pet food diet because they wanted to feed what were called species appropriate food. And I think nutrition is very important. I also am concerned about public health. So back to the fact that you have air dried pet food that is raw, that does look like jerky, that is in a house where there are children present, that if the pet walks away from the bowl for a second, or if it allows the child to put their hand in the bowl and eat that food, they could be exposing the child to Salmonella, Listeria, and E. coli. I just cannot I just cannot overstate how concerned I am about the public health safety, particularly with children in the home. So in the case of labels and AFCO, they have made it a requirement that raw product safe handling instructions should be on the label, because raw pet food is often the source of pathogenic, as I said, those are food poisoning type of bacteria. This is a public health concern. So I'm going to read this container that had very clear directions on the bottle, on the container, I'm sorry, of pet food for a raw pet food. And it says, simple handling tips. So right then and there, they want to alleviate your mind that this food called Instinct Raw is not anything to be concerned about. Simple handling tips. When serving Instinct Raw, simply use common sense handling. Keep frozen until ready to defrost. Wash hands before handling. For maximum food safety and freshness, defrost your pet's daily portion by thawing it in a covered container in the refrigerator overnight or for approximately 4 to 6 hours. For ideal food safety, product should be cold to the touch when served. Remember to wash working surfaces, utensils, including preparation areas and feeding bowls, and other items that touch or come into contact with raw meat or poultry. If your pet does not consume all of the food presented within 30 minutes, remove any leftovers and discard. Use hot soapy water to wash your hands and your pet's bowl after each feeding. And it goes on to say this contains ground bone. Keep the package sealed to maintain freshness. So again, I have to say that I'm concerned about the public health safety when dealing with raw food. Now, you know, you follow all of these items on here, but what are you going to do when a kid jumps in the middle of this, when a baby crawls over and touches anything? This is a concern, and I think people need to be extremely wise when they are dealing with any of these products, and they have to be logical and understand that they are going to have more problems with pathogenic bacteria that are really a concern for their children as well as themselves. So that's the end of my presentation today. I hope that you enjoyed it. And I wanted to say that I really look forward to my weekly visits here. And I do enjoy spending the time going through this and talking with people. I am no longer in clinical medicine, as in going into an office every day and seeing people and their pets. Well, yeah, there is COVID going on for sure. And, you know, a lot of veterinarians are doing what are called curbside care. And some are doing what is termed a telehealth appointments on the phone or with video chats. And I do some of that. But mine is specifically regarding pet food and pet food safety. And I am, you know, referring actual nutrition questions to nutritionists, and those are veterinarians who are board certified in veterinary nutrition for animals, whereas I am laser focused and specifically working on pet food safety. So when you listen to me talk about the different things with pet food, I am talking about the safety of the food itself. And we are so much more aware of that now more than ever when we are dealing with our own nutrition, and then we start thinking about nutrition for our pets. And I want to tell you that this is a passion for me. And I know that some of you have even done some appointments with me to talk about their pet food safety concerns. And I want to thank you for trusting in me and for allowing me to come into your homes and to spend that time talking about pet food safety, because no matter what happens and how we're all trying so hard to read labels and understand what is the best nutrition to give to our pets, it is really also a matter of safety. Pet food safety is the other side of the coin of pet food. So we have nutrition on one side and we have safety on the other side of the coin. Both are equally important. And I want to thank all of you who believe in me, the pet food vet, and have welcomed me in on our weekly chats. And I will continue to do this as a public service. These chats are free, available on my website. I do have pet food safety veterinary labs.com website, and also the pet food vet. And I do want to thank you again for joining me today on my live stream. And I will see you next week. This is Dr. Donna DeBonis signing out. And thanks for joining me today.